Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel, welcome to the first video on this channel. I hope you will enjoy it, I hope these expressions will come in handy. So today we're going to talk about 10 useful conversation phrases that I personally use on a daily basis. So for me it's a must. My students will probably confirm it that I use these expressions all the time, and today I would simply like to share these expressions with you so that you could possibly implement it, introduce it into your speaking, into your conversations, okay? So if you're ready, let's get started. Of course, remember that at the end of this class, you will also be able to download this free PDF. You have a link in the description of this video, so you don't have to take any notes because everything will be included in this PDF, okay? So let's get started. Okay, expression number 1, fair enough. Fair enough. And when do we actually use it? Well, I use it whenever I want to just say, okay, no problem, I understand you, everything's fine, no problem, okay? But in order to show you how it works, let's have a look at this mini dialogue I've created for you. How about we postpone today's meeting? Fair enough, but we need to discuss these matters tomorrow, okay? So fair enough here means okay, no problem, but still remember that we need to discuss these matters tomorrow. And perhaps one more example with this fair enough expression. Let's have a look. You know, I need more time to finish this task. Fair enough, let me know once you finish. So, okay, no problem, fair enough, let me know once you finish. Okay, so I hope this one is clear. Let's move on to the next one. The second phrase is no worries, and in the American accent they would actually say no worries, okay? So worries and no worries, that would be the British pronunciation, and that simply means don't worry, no problem, don't worry. I guess this one is a bit more informal, slangish, so no worries can be used in this casual conversation. However, I have to tell you that I've used it and I've heard it in business conversations as well, so you can use them at meetings. If you know somebody quite well, then no problem. And example, sorry, I forgot to call you back yesterday. No worries, I was busy anyway. So no problem, don't worry, I was busy anyway. No worries, expression number 2. Another one, how come? How come? And here that basically means why, but here we want to show a bit of surprise. So you're actually surprised, shocked possibly, and you want to know why a person has said a certain thing or why they have done something, and you simply ask, how come? Why, right? How come? And now example, the client has terminated the contract. How come? They said our cooperation was going smoothly. So you see here, this how come simply means why? Like, how is it possible? They said our cooperation was going smoothly, everything was fine, and suddenly they just stopped their cooperation, they terminated the contract. So how come? Very useful expression as well. Phrase number 4, it rings a bell. It rings a bell. So that actually can be paraphrased into sounds familiar. So you basically know something, you're familiar with something, possibly you've heard of something before, and you simply want to say, yeah, it rings a bell. So maybe you can't really recall the details of the situation or information, but it definitely rings a bell. It sounds familiar. Example, have you heard of this company? Yeah, it rings a bell. Sounds familiar. So that means you have heard of that company somewhere, but it's not like you know a lot about that company. And of course, remember that you can also use it in a negative sentence, and you can say, it doesn't ring a bell. Sorry, it doesn't ring a bell, meaning like you've never heard of it. It doesn't sound familiar, simply. Phrase number 5, never heard of it. So this is actually how you can answer the question that we've had. So have you ever heard of this company? And then you can just say, never heard of it. So instead of actually using this full sentence, I have never heard of it, remember we have this preposition of here, you can simply say in this casual English, never heard of it. It sounds quite nice, you can use it in this kind of casual conversation. Let's have a look at some example. Do you know this brand? Possibly. Never heard of it. Doesn't ring a bell. So you could also use the other expression, expression number 4. So never heard of it or doesn't ring a bell. Expression number 6. I hope that you're still with me. Expression number 6 is tell me about it. And actually, at first glance, you might think it's about tell me more, tell me about it. But actually, it means something completely different. You actually identify with what the person has said. You have the same experience. That person doesn't even need to explain anything because you basically feel the same. So you can very often use it in these kind of negative situations when somebody is complaining. And for instance, if somebody says, you know, prices are constantly going up, and then you can say, yeah, tell me about it. Meaning you don't even have to say anything like, I feel exactly the same. I understand you. Tell me about it, okay? So here you can actually use this kind of falling intonation, tell me about it. Yeah, tell me about it, okay? So this one might be a bit tricky, that's why it's worth knowing this context that this phrase is used in. Tell me about it. Expression number 7. What have you been up to? So here you can actually practice this pronunciation aspect with me because you actually link the consonant, spółgłoska, with a vowel, samogłoska. So what have you been up to? Been up to, been up to, okay? What have you been up to? And that simply means, what have you been doing lately, recently? What have you been doing? But in this casual conversation, again, you can very often hear, what have you been up to? What have you been up to? And the example, as you can see, Patricia, long time no see. What have you been up to? What have you been doing? And then, of course, you can continue and you can also say, how is life? What are you up to these days? And pay attention here, I've actually used the same phrase, but in this normal present tense. So instead of saying, what have you been up to? What have you been doing lately? I've used, what are you up to? Meaning, what are you doing these days at this very moment? Okay, so you have 2 phrases here, very similar ones. Expression number 8, remember we have 10 of them, so we are almost done. When it comes to. And probably you're quite well familiar with this expression, but still I recommend that you use it all the time whenever you want to answer some questions during a job interview, for instance. But I would like to draw your attention to 2 facts, elements, aspects here. Namely, remember that we don't say when it comes, but when it comes, okay? And another thing is that people very often say if it comes, okay? Because this is like the Polish translation. Jeśli chodzi o, if it comes. It's not actually correct. We should really say when it comes to something. And now the synonym actually could be as far as something is concerned. This one is actually a bit more formal, so you can use it in emails possibly, during some more formal meetings. So as far as X is concerned, or when it comes to X, when it comes to something. Let's have a look at some example. When it comes to my education, I have a master's degree in accounting. So you see, during a job interview, if you got a question like, what's your education? Can you tell me something about your education? Then you could actually start, well, when it comes to my education. Or you can also use the other phrase, well, as far as my education is concerned, I have a master's degree in accounting. Sounds quite nice, doesn't it? And now phrase number 10. What makes you think so? And I actually use this phrase very often during my classes whenever a student gives me a certain answer and I want to actually know why he thinks the way he or she does. I ask another question, which is like, what makes you think so? Why do you think so? What makes you think so? Example, I'm not sure if this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, you know. And then I can say, how come? What makes you think so? So I've actually used a phrase that we've already discussed, how come? So you're a bit surprised, right? You want to ask why. And then you can continue with, what makes you think so? Why do you think so? Okay. And the last phrase, what do you mean by that? So these two phrases are actually quite similar. What makes you think so? Why do you think so? Or what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? So if you want somebody to clarify something they've already said, then you can ask this follow-up question and you can just say, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Or what makes you think so? An example, you know, I feel I'm getting burnt out. And then, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? What makes you think so? How come? So you can actually use one of these three options here. And now that would be it when it comes to these 10 conversation phrases that I personally like and use on a daily basis. And now I would like us to move on to this practice part where we're going to practice this small talk a bit. So I will actually show you a few more dialogues that I've already provided, and your task will be to actually translate the Polish fragments into the English language using the phrases we've learned together. And please, I really suggest that you pronounce these phrases aloud, because the best idea to practice English, to practice vocabulary and speaking and small talk is to simply say things aloud, because in this way you can actually get used to the way you speak, you can control your voice, you can work on your intonation, pronunciation, and also you don't just have to write it down, you can just say it aloud and then compare it with my answer. Are you ready? So let's get started. Dialogue number 1. You know what? I think I'm not a suitable candidate for this position. What makes you think so? I think you're a perfect match. Of course, you can stop the video to think about the proper answer. You can also stop the video once I've read the whole dialogue so that you could practice this dialogue once again, okay? So you have many options. I will read it once again so that you could possibly repeat after me. What makes you think so? I think you're a perfect match. Let's have a look at dialogue number 2. Oh my God, it's scorching hot today. It's so hot today. Yeah, tell me about it. I haven't done anything today. I'm so lazy today. Okay, tell me about it. Dialogue number 3. Guess what? I'm moving abroad. How come? What about your job and family? Of course, remember, you can stop the video to think about the answer or repeat after me, okay? So take your time. Dialogue number 4. Can you tell me a bit about your experience in marketing? Well, when it comes to my experience, I have worked in several marketing agencies so far. Dialogue number 5. You know, I won't make it to the meeting. I can't come to the meeting. Well, no worries. It's going to be recorded anyway. Dialogue number 6. Can't you remember? I told you about it the other day. Yeah, it rings a bell. Sounds familiar. So you have two options here. It rings a bell. It sounds familiar. Okay. Number 7. You know what? I don't feel like going out tonight. Fair enough. We can stay home if you want to. Dialogue number 8. Hi there. I haven't seen you in a while. I know. What have you been up to lately? What have you been up to these days? And that would actually be it when it comes to our practical part. I hope you've enjoyed it. Of course, let me know in the comment whether you've enjoyed this theoretical part. What about the practical part? Perhaps there is something you would like me to change when it comes to these technical aspects. Perhaps I'm speaking too fast, or maybe I'm not giving you enough time to say these sentences aloud in the practical part. So I'm looking forward to all your feedback. This is my first video, so I'm open to any suggestions. And of course, please remember that you can collect a free PDF with all the notes from today's episode, so all the expressions, all the dialogues I've provided, and also this practical part so that you could practice in your spare time. It's actually quite useful to do this exercise once in a while, to say these phrases aloud, and I guess in this way they will just get stuck in your mind and you will be able to use them actively in your small talk, in your conversation. Remember that if you're subscribed to my newsletter, each time a new video is released, you will simply receive this notification via email that there is a new episode waiting for you on YouTube, but also you will receive this PDF in that email. So if you're not yet my subscriber of my newsletter, then sign up. You have the link in the description box below this video. Have a lovely day. Cheers.